So we go to accounting, chapter 3. So when you talk about trial balance, as soon as we prepare our ledger, which is for different accounts, the balance on this ledger has to be listed in the trial balance. So a trial balance is a list of all the ledgers accounts for a specific period of time. Do you get what I mean here? As soon as we have our ledger for each account, for each transaction, so we need to prepare a list of all the balances in the ledger. So where we prepare those lists of all the balances in the ledger is called the trial balance. Do you get what trial balance is here? Do you get it, please?
Yes.
All right, so let's go down. Introduction. A trial balance is a list of the balances on the accounts in the ledger at a certain period of time. So like what I just said now, a certain period of time or date. A trial balance is prepared to check the arithmetical accuracy of the double entry bookkeeping. So there might be errors in our ledger. So how are we going to be able to check if there are arithmetic errors in our ledger? We're able to check through the trial balance. So our trial balance must balance. So if your trial balance doesn't balance, it means there's an arithmetic accuracy or inaccuracy. There's an arithmetical error. And when we talk about arithmetical error, we're talking about addition or subtraction. So it means where you're supposed to add, you subtracted, or where you're supposed to subtract, you added. That is what we call arithmetical inaccuracy or arithmetical error. Is it clear? Is it clear, please? Yes. All right, so the name of each account is listed in trial balance. The balance on each account is shown according to whether it is a debit balance or a credit balance. The trial balance will show if the total of the debit balance is equal to the total of the credit balances. So in your trial balance, the total of your credit must equal to the total of the debit. If it is not equal, then there's an arithmetical error. Do you get the point, please?
Yes.
All right. So it is important to remember that the trial balance is not a part of a double entry system of bookkeeping, as it's simply a list of balances. So if the ledger accounts are balanced monthly, then the trial balance may also be drawn up at the end of each month. Your trial balance it's not part of the double entry system. We only need it to understand if they are accurately added or not. That is what we use the trial balance for. So if your ledger account ends at the end of the month, if you balance up at the end of the month, your trial balance must end at the end of the month. If it is towards the end of the year, your trial balance must be recorded towards the end of the year. You get it?
Yes.
Okay. So a trial balance should be added with the term trial balance along with the date on which it was prepared. So the trial balance as at January 31st, 2005, or at the end of May, at the 31st of December, 2019. So your trial balance must be trial balance at the date of which the transaction is ended. Do you get it? Is it clear, please? Yes. So this is how the trial balance looks like. So we have the details, the folio, accounts to be debited, accounts to be credited. Clear? So what are the purpose of trial balance? The trial balance can help in locating arithmetical errors. However, the balancing of the trial balance is not proof that the entries in the ledger accounts are completely free from errors. So yes, one of the purposes of the trial balance is to locate arithmetical error. But the trial balance does not tell you that there are no errors in your ledger. Because sometimes there are some errors that we call errors that do not affect our trial balance. Like errors of principal, errors of commission. These errors do not affect your trial balance. It doesn't mean that your trial balance will not balance. For example, error of commission. When you are supposed to credit A Abdul, you credited Abdul A. Did you get it? So Abdul was to be credited, but you credited Abdul A. They are not the same, they are different accounts. But they are both credit entries. So your trial balance will still balance. That is not arithmetical error. Do you get the point I'm making here? Errors about commission is just about the account name. You are supposed to credit A Abdul, or you're supposed to debit A Abdul. You credited Abdul A. That is error of commission. Your trial balance will still balance because the ledger is still okay. Just that the name in the account is not the same. The name is supposed to be Abdul A, but it is now A Abdul. Do you get it? Yes. That is the point you're making here. Do you get it? The second purpose of having a trial balance is it is useful in preparing the financial statement. When we talk about financial statement, we're talking about your statement of profit and loss account and your statement of financial position. Do you get what I'm saying there? So with your trial balance, you'll be able to prepare those things. Clear? Do you get my point? Thanks. So the first reason why we have to open the trial balance or to prepare a trial balance is because we want to check the arithmetical accuracy of our ledger. Checking the arithmetical accuracy doesn't mean that your trial balance is still free from error, because you might have other errors that would affect the trial balance. That will not affect the trial balance, but it will affect your ledger. Example is error of commission, like I said earlier. Instead of recording Muhammad M, you recorded an M Muhammad. They are not the same. Or instead of recording to Muhammad's account, you recorded it to Mumin's account. That is error of commission. So your trial balance will still balance because you recorded the transaction where it's supposed to be recorded, but with different account name. Is it clear? Is it clear, please? Yes. So those are the two reasons why we open the trial balance. Now we go on to the preparation of the trial balance. All the ledgers accounts which are open, those which still have an amount of money showing in the account, are listed together with the balance on each account. So we have creditors accounts, we have maybe expenditures. All expenses will be recorded on one account. All incomes will be recorded in one account. So if the debit side of the account is larger in money than the credit side, then the account has a debit balance, and the amount of the balance or difference is entered in the debit column of the trial balance. If the credit side of the account has more money than the debit side, then that account has a credit balance, and the amount of the credit or the amount of the difference is entered in the credit column of the trial balance. So the difference, if the debit side is having more than the credit side, you record it in your debit side. If the credit side is having more than the debit side, you record it in your credit side, because it means you're having more credit. You're having a credit balance. But if your number is more, the debit side is more than the credit side, it means you're having a debit balance. It will be recorded in the debit side. That is what they are saying there in the trial balance. So the debit column and the credit column are total. If the totals agree, it indicates that the double entry bookkeeping is arithmetically correct. As soon as you are done with the entries, both the debit and the credit, they are balanced. It means your account is free from arithmetical error. Not free from your posting in the ledger, but it means that all your accounts are arithmetically accurate. That means you have added what you are supposed to add, you have subtracted what you are supposed to subtract. Is it clear? So, I just started this business on January 27. His transaction for his first week of trading that we are shown in the below. So we have, look at what we have here. We have bank, capital, fixtures. So I'm going to explain how this is done. In your trial balance, all your assets are recorded in the debit side of the trial balance. Your assets are recorded where? The debit side of the trial balance. Your liabilities are recorded on the credit side of the trial balance. That's for assets and liabilities. Your drawings will be recorded on the debit side. Your capital will be recorded on the credit side. Your expenses will be recorded on the debit side. And your income will be recorded on the credit side. Do you get what I'm saying here? Do you get it, please? Yes. Rent payable will be recorded on the debit side. Rent receivable will be recorded on the credit side. Because rent payable means an expenses to you. Rent receivable is an income for you. So all your income is recorded on the credit side of your trial balance. All your expenses are recorded on the debit side of the trial balance. So you have to understand the difference now. Sales and purchases. The sales, which is sales is on the credit side, purchases on the debit side. Sales returns is on the debit side. Purchases returns is on the credit side of your trial balance. I declare. Okay. So the bank, that means the balance in your bank account, it will be recorded on the debit side, yes or no? Your capital, you're giving money to the business, it will be recorded on the credit side of the trial balance. Fixtures and equipment, this is an asset, yes or no? It will be, yes or no? Yes. It will be recorded on the debit side of your transaction, trial balance. Loans, it's a liability. It will be recorded on the credit side of your trial balance. Motor vehicles is an asset. It will be recorded, please look at it, please. Motor vehicle will be recorded on the debit side of the trial balance. Loan will be recorded on the credit side of the trial balance. Rent payable, which is an expenses, will be recorded on the debit side of the trial balance. Insurance, which is also an expenses, yes or no?
Yes.
It will be recorded on the debit side of the trial balance. Motor expenses, which is an expenses, it will be recorded on the debit side of your trial balance. Rent receivable, which is an income, that means part of your rent or part of your premises that you rented part of it to someone else who is going to be paying you a rent. That is rent receivable. It's an income for you, yes or no?
Yes.
So it will be recorded on the credit side of the trial balance. Based on the fact that we've recorded all these transactions on the right side of the trial balance, it has to balance. Any question about that?
No.
So we move on. So the debit balances and the credit balances, I explained them already. Assets on the debit side, expenses on the debit side, drawings on the debit side, purchases on the debit side, sales returns on the debit side, liabilities on the credit side, incomes on the credit side, capital on the credit side, sales on the credit side, purchases returns on the credit side. Clear?
Yes.
So we have a transaction now. Look at this transaction. This transaction is not balanced. Why is it not balanced? It's because there are some errors in the posting. So let's just check it one at a time. Cash. Cash is supposed to be on the debit side, not on the credit side.
Yes.
So cash 300 is supposed to be on the debit side.
Bank overdraft.
Bank overdraft is a liability.
Really?
So wait. So we have this transaction. We have cash. Cash is supposed to be a debit balance, not a credit. So that's the first thing. So write it out. This we have 300. So cash is supposed to be debit, not credit. Bank overdraft is supposed to be a credit entry because a loan is a short-term loan. It's supposed to be a credit, but it's written on the debit side here. So that's an error. Capital.
Okay.
Capital is credit, is fine. Drawings is also credit. No, drawing is supposed to be what? A debit entry. Yes or no?
Yes.
Because the opposite of capital is drawing, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Land and buildings.
Debit.
Land is supposed to be debited because an asset it's debited, so it's fine. Office equipment is supposed to be a debit, not credit, because it's an asset. Loan from AB company, it's a loan. It's supposed to be a credit entry. It is debited, that's why it's not correct. Inventory is a debit entry, it's debit. It's a debit entry, not credit. Purchases. Purchases is supposed to be a debit entry. Is it debit? No, it's credit here. So you change it to the debit side. Sales supposed to be a credit entry, not debit. Sales returns. Sales returns supposed to be what? A debit entry. Purchases returns supposed to be a credit entry. Wages is an expenses. It's supposed to be a debit entry. Rent receivable is an income. It's supposed to be a credit entry. Sundry expenses is supposed to be an expenses to be on the debit side. Trade receivable is an trade receivable. That's what is trade receivable? Your debtor.
Yeah.
Your debtor is supposed to be on the debit side. Then trade payable, that's your creditor supposed to be on the credit side. Is it clear?
Yes.
So when you do that, it's supposed to balance. Do you have any question about it?
No.
So here they have the corrected one. So we have our trade payable on this. So as soon as we do it that way, it's going to be balanced. Clear, right?
Yes.
So we have a question.
No.
It says state the column of the trial balance in which the balance of each of the following accounts would appear, and give a reason for your answers in each case. Do you have it there?
Yes, it's nice.
So loan from WQ loans. Is it a debit on the trial balance or credit on the trial balance?
A loan.
Yeah, from WQ loan, Q loans.
Oh, it's credit. It's liability.
Is it because it's a liability? Thank you. Motor expenses.
Well, expenses. So it's credit.
Debit
Yes.
because an expenses. Okay. Motor vehicle.
Expenses.
Motor vehicle.
Motor vehicle.
Not motor expenses. There's a difference between motor expenses and motor vehicle.
Is,
motor vehicle is what?
Debit.
Is a debit. Why?
Equipment. Machinery.
It's an asset.
It's an asset. Yeah.
It's an asset. Then we have bank overdraft.
Credit.
Bank overdraft?
Credit.
It's a credit. Because it's a short-term loan. Yes. It's a liability. Carriage outward is an expenses, right? Debit or credit?
Debit.
Commission receivable.
Commission receivable.
Receivable debit.
No.
Credit, yeah.
There's difference between different receivables here. We have commission receivable. That means you are receiving commissions. That's an income. Credit. Is it clear? Is it clear, please?
Yes.
So we'll go on to the trial balance and errors. So we'll go to the trial balance. Yeah, we'll go to the trial balance and errors. If the trial balance fails to balance, when the trial balance, sorry, it's a mistake that they wrote trial balance. When the trial balance fails to balance, it is obvious that an error has been made somewhere. This may be one, an error of addition within the trial balance. So what are the reasons why our trial balance would not balance? That is the point. One of the reasons is that there's error of addition within the trial balance. Where you are supposed to add, maybe in the course of you adding up, you made a mistake. Two, an error of addition within one of the ledger's account. So your ledgers, in combining all of your ledgers, maybe there's an error in the addition. The third one, entry a different figure on the credit to that entered on the debit when making a double entry in the ledger. You're supposed to record 5,000 on sales account. You did it in sales account, 5,000. But when you're supposed to record in the customer's account that you sold to, you recorded 4,000 or 2,000. There's an error already, yes or no?
Yes.
Making a single entry for a transaction rather than a double entry. When you make a single entry, that means you make a credit entry without making the corresponding debit entry. Or you make a debit entry without making a corresponding credit entry. It will be an error. There will be an error in the trial balance. Do you get my point? Do you get my point, please?
Yes.
Make it, okay. Entering the transaction twice on the same side of the ledger. You recorded the transaction twice on the same ledger. That's an error. You get it? So these are the reasons why there's going to be an error in our trial balance. So that's why there's going to be an error detected in the trial balance. Your trial balance will not balance if there is arithmetical error like addition. Your trial balance will not balance if you make a single entry instead of making double entry system. Your trial balance will not balance if you recorded a different number in the credit side and a different number on the debit side. You're having different figures, so your trial balance will not balance. Do you get it? Yes. And your trial balance will not balance if when you make an entry twice on the same side of your ledger. So these are the reasons why we can have error in our trial balance. Is it clear?
Yes.
So we go to errors. If the trial balance balances, if the trial balance balances, it doesn't mean that there are no errors. There might be errors, but these errors do not affect our trial balance. So what are those errors that do not affect trial balance? Number one, error of commission, like I said earlier. This occurs when the transaction is entered using the correct amount on the correct side, but in the wrong account of the same class. So instead of recording into Marlini's account, you recorded in Malika's account. That is an error that will not affect the trial balance. Do you get my point?
Yes.
Okay, the second one, error of complete reversal. For error of complete reversal, this occurs when the correct amount is entered in the correct account, but the entry has been made on the wrong side of each account. What you're supposed to record on the debit side, you recorded on the credit side. It's complete reversal. So you're supposed to debit purchases account. You credited purchases account. You're supposed to debit supply, or you're supposed to credit supplier's account. You debited supplier's account. This is complete reversal. Where you're supposed to debit, you credited with the same amount, Where you're supposed to credit, you debited with the same amount. Your trial balance will still balance, isn't it? Because the amount is still intact. But what you have done is, what you are supposed to credited, you debited. What you are supposed to debited, you credited. Clear? Error of omission. For error of omission, this occurs when a transaction has been completely omitted from the accounting. There's a transaction for AB Limited. We did not record it at all. So we don't have a debit entry for it or a credit entry for it. So it will still balance, isn't it? That's error of omission. The fourth one, error of original entry. This occurs when an incorrect figure is used when a transaction is first entered in the accounting records. The double entry will therefore use the incorrect figure. There's error of original entry. When you're starting your account, when you open your ledger account, instead of you to record AB Muhammad as 1,000, you record it as $100. So the $100 will be credited and debited. For error of principle, they said this occurs when the transaction is entered using the correct amount on the correct side, but in the wrong class of account. Like motor expenses, he said motor expenses is supposed to be debited, but you debited motor vehicle account. That was what we were talking about the other time. You were talking about motor expenses, which has to be debited, and motor vehicle has to be debited too. But motor expenses is an expenditure. Motor vehicle is an asset. So both of them are going to be recorded on the debit side, yes, but they are wrong class of accounts. This is all called error of principle. You are supposed to debit it. Yes, it's debited. But instead of writing motor vehicle, you wrote or you recorded on motor expenses. Instead of recording on motor expenses, you recorded on motor vehicle. That is what we call error of principle. Your trial balance will still balance. Clear? Yes. We go to compensating errors. So when we talk about compensating error, this occurs when two or more errors cancel each other out. You make a mistake on the debit side of $100, and at the same time, you make a mistake on the credit side of $100. It cancels. Yes or no? Yes. So here, your trial balance will still balance. There's an error of $100 on the debit side. There's an error of $100 on the credit side. So that means your trial balance will still balance. Isn't it? Yes. Do you get it or not? Yes. This is what we call compensating errors. Here they said, purchase account under added by $100 and sales returns account over added by $100. Purchases account is a debit. So you overdo it you over added $100 with it. Sales returns is over added by $100 too. Do you get it? Your sales return is over added by $100. Your purchases return is under added by $100. Both are debit entry, but one has been reduced by $100 and one has been added by $100. So the $100 cancels it. Please get the point. You overcharged your sales returns account by $100. You undercharged your purchases account by $100. Both purchases account and sales returns accounts are debit entries. One supposed to be 1,000, it is now 900. One supposed to be 1,000, it is 1,100. So 1,100 plus 900 will still give you 2,000. So 1,000 plus 1,000 will also give you 2,000. Do you get it or not? Your purchases account is supposed to be recorded as 1,000. You recorded it as 900. That is undercharged, undervalued, $100. Yes or no? Put it on one side. Your sales account or your sales return was supposed to be 1,000. You recorded 1,100. You've overcharged or overvalued it with 100. Yes or no? So 1,100 plus 900 gives you 2,000. Normally, your purchases account is supposed to be 1,000 and your sales return was supposed to be 1,000, which will still give you 2,000. So there's an error of compensation here, but it will still balance your trial balance because what you needed was 2,000. So either ways, you still have your 2,000. Normally, it's supposed to be 1,000, 1,000, but now you're having 900 and 1,100. So it won't affect your trial balance. Will it affect it? Because you are recording 2,000, but you've recorded it in the wrong way. This is what we call compensating errors. So all these errors will not affect our trial balance. All these errors will not make our trial balance not to balance. They will still balance. So we have errors that affect trial balance and we have errors that do not affect trial balance. Do you get the point, please? So I'm going to quickly recap it. So for errors that affect trial balance, we talked about arithmetic errors. That means additional error if you affect your trial balance. We talked about when you make a single entry instead of making a double entry, it will affect your trial balance. We talked about what again? For errors that affect your trial balance. Yes, we said when you make additional error to affect your trial balance, when your errors are when they are not added to affect your trial balance, when you don't that's number one. Number two, when you make a single entry, it will affect your trial balance. What other errors affect your trial balance? You guys have forgotten. What other errors affect your trial balance? I said single entry will affect your trial balance. Single entry will affect your trial balance.
Transaction twice.
When you recorded transaction twice on the same side of account, it will affect your trial balance. When you make additional errors, additional errors, it will affect your trial balance. What else?
An addition within one ledger.
We talked about that.
There's two kinds of addition. Addition with trial balance and addition
within the
one ledger.
Within one ledger, okay. So for errors that do not affect your trial balance, these are one, compensating error, which means you undercharge one account on the debit side and you overcharge another account on the debit side. This is compensating error. We talked about error of principle, where you have different account names. Instead of you to record the motor expenses account, you recorded the motor vehicle account. They are both debit entries. Their trial balance will still balance. We talked about errors of original entry. You started opening an account with a wrong number. You started with 1,000. So 1,000 will continue to be recorded. So it's not going to affect your trial balance. We talked about error of omission, where you did not even record the double entry system, double entry transaction. And we talked about error of commission, where you use different account name to open an account. That means you debited A Muhammad instead of Muhammad A. Error of commission. So your trial balance will still balance. Any question about that? Please don't forget the errors that affect trial balance. The one we talked about, additional errors, the additions in the trial balance. If there's addition error, it affects the trial balance. We talked about error of addition within one ledger account. We talked about entering of different entries in the debit side and the credit side. You recorded 100 on the debit side, you recorded 50 or 70 on the credit side to affect your trial balance. We talked about making a single entry instead of making a double entry that affects your trial balance. Or twice, when you record each transaction twice in the same side of the ledger. And for errors that affect your trial balance, error of commission, error of principle, compensating error, error of principle, compensating error of commission, error of omission, and error of original entry. These errors will affect your trial balance. I think they are clear, right? Okay. So let's see what we have here. Now we have the questions. Okay, let's see. The first one, they said, the balance of which account may appear on the debit side of the trial balance? Carried inward, rent receivables.
Let's choose one or the ones that
What's the question saying? The question says, which account may appear on the debit side of the trial balance? Carried inward, rent receivables, purchasing returns, sales. Which one will be on the credit on the debit side of your trial balance?
carried inwards.
Carried inward. Why?
Because the carried inwards.
It's an expenses.
Yeah. Carried inwards because
Rent receivable is an income.
Yes. So
purchases returns is going out, and sales is on the same side as purchases returns. So the only one that will be recorded on the debit side of the trial balance is your carried inward. Then we go to question 2. You did it.
Yeah.
It balanced, right?
Yes.
Okay then.
Give me the next one.
All right then.
The next one they said is find the bank value.
So let's go to question 4. The totals of the trial balance did not agree. Which error may have caused this? The total of the trial balance did not agree. Which error might or may have caused this?
Did not agree. And Which one's different?
Expenses paid in cash omitted from the accounting records. That's error of omission.
Yes.
It does not affect trial balance. Goods sold on credit to Jones debited on Jensen's account. That's error of commission. It does not affect trial balance. Repairs to machinery debited to machinery account. That is error of principle. It does not affect your trial balance. So the total of purchases returns account overcast. That would affect your trial balance because that is error of addition. Is it clear?
Yes.
Question 5. Rent receivable received from a tenant in cash 450 was entered in the account of as 460. How would this affect the trial balance? Rent received from a tenant in cash was entered as 460. So that means your debit balance, your cash has been overstated. Your cash has been overstated, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Which side though? So it's
always the debit balance.
Yes.
And your rent receivable.
That's it.
Cash is overstated.
We.
And rent receivable is what?
Overstated.
Rent received from a tenant in cash is 450. Was entered in the accounts as 460. That means your debit entry has been overstated by $10, which is cash, and your rent receivable has been what? Overstated also.
So it's B.
Yes, B.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Question 6. Here they said, a trial balance drawn up at the end of Jim's financial year balance. The following errors were then discovered. Goods returns to K. Weston has been debited to K. Wilton. State the type of error made in each of these errors. That is error of what? Goods returns to K. Weston has been debited to K. Wilton. That is error of commission. Repairs to office equipment has been debited in office equipment account.
Error of principle.
Error of principle. Thank you.
I did.
Okay, you did it. All right then. That's done. So that's all about chapter 3, right? So we start with economics now.